Hello, and welcome to the starter class on the Camera Animation Tool extension. In this tutorial, I'll be walking you through how to animate cameras to slide, move, adjust, and zero in on the action. Ready to get started? Let's begin. First off, we are going to need to be sure the Camera Animation Tool is loaded up and ready for use. Note that though I will be using Machinima to demonstrate usage, the Camera Animation Tool is an extension that can be loaded on any relevant kit-based apps. To do this, simply navigate to Windows, then Extensions. Now, let's select the search bar and type in Camera Anim, and we should see the extension shown in the list. Select and enable it. Great. Now, close the window and we're all set. Fantastic. Now, let's start animating a camera. To make this meaningful, let's load up a scene where we can have a little fun. This demonstration is not content relevant, but I will be using the USD astronaut scene today if you wish to follow along. The path is Omniverse, then select either your local host or another Nucleus server, NVIDIA, then Samples, then Astronaut, and finally astronaut.usd. And let's get that open. Nice. Okay, our scene is all loaded up and it's looking good. Now let's take note that this scene already has a few cameras. If we drop down the default prim, we can see there are two cameras here, long view and close up. Let's delete these so we can start fresh. All right, we now have no cameras in our scene and we are ready to get started. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and locate our Camera Animation Tool panel. If using default layout, it will be located in a tab on the bottom right of the screen. Cool. Now, in order to use the Camera Animation Tool, we're going to need a camera. Now, we could use other methods like Create Camera or Perspective, Camera, Create Camera from View. But instead, right here in the panel, we have a very convenient way to create new cameras from our current viewpoint. Let's go ahead and frame our picture, and then let's click that button. Awesome. Now, if you look in the stage, we in fact have a new camera, and if we look here, the viewport is already looking through that camera. Excellent. All right. While we're here, let's go ahead and select our camera and edit the properties. We're going to need to set up our focal distance and our f-stop so that we get a little bit of depth of field going on. Because our cameras won't be absolutely identical, we're going to have to set these numbers on our own, and I would not necessarily follow the numbers that I'm putting in here. Just kind of work with it until you get a nice sharp focus on your astronaut. Okay, this looks good for me, and I'm going to call it done right here. Great. The next thing we need to do is add some time to our animation. If you notice down here, the start and the end times are both set to 0. Let's set our end time to 1000 frames. That should be plenty enough. Great. Now that we have some time to play with, let's go ahead and add a key. We do that by pressing this button here. Cool. We now have a camera track, a key, and a tween. Okay, let's slide our playhead somewhere in the sequence. Then let's adjust our camera to a new position. Cool. I think that should work quite nicely. Okay, let's add another key. And good. You just made your first camera sweep. Let's scrub our playhead and see what it looks like. Okay, now that we know our motion is working, let's give it a play and give it a test for speed. Probably a little slow for my liking. This thing is barely crawling along. Let's go ahead and slide our second keyframe to adjust our timing a bit. Simply click and drag. Okay. Let's give it another play. Okay, looking good. We've sped up our animation a bit and it's starting to feel right. Now, the motion between the keys is not quite what I'm looking for. Let's go ahead and right-click between the keys to expose the interpolation and remapping options. Interpolation will control the shape of the path, while remapping will grant options for easing in and out of a tween. In this case, I will select to interpolate with the linear slurp, and I'll remap with ease in out so as to give me a nice, clean, smooth camera transition. And give it a play. Nice, it's definitely looking better, but I think I'd like my camera to be just a little closer when the camera motion stops. For this, I'll need to edit my end key. Let's go ahead and double-click the end keyframe, and notice that the playhead will snap to the key. Keep this in mind, as it's a lot quicker than trying to position the playhead manually over a keyframe for editing. Now, move the camera a bit closer to the astronaut, and let's now update this key with the Create Update Key button. Feel free to give it a quick scrub and another play if you like. Now, copying keys can be extremely useful. I'll give you a quick example here. So again, let's double-click the key, then select Copy Key. Now, if we move our playhead out a little bit, we can paste that key. Great. Now, let's go ahead and edit our focal length in the camera properties to 45, allowing us to zoom in. Then set the f-stop to 0.1. This should give us a nice soft shot. Great. Now, let's update our key, and like magic, we have a lovely blur out. So as we can now see, the camera tool is not limited to just animating your positions. Instead, you can fully animate all aspects of the camera properties as well. Pretty cool. Okay, you have just gone through all the critical motions of using the camera animation tool and are more or less ready to begin animating your own cameras in your own scenes. However, there is one last tip I'd like to leave you with before concluding. You may notice this drop down over here, and it can be a real lifesaver in certain situations, especially if you are focused on camera and animation work. Notice that while this is set to use selection, the timeline adapts to the selection. This can be rather inconvenient at times. If you go ahead and select your camera, then select Lock to Selection, changing your selection in the stage or the viewport will no longer cause the panel to switch. Very useful. Also in this list is Lock to Viewport, which will automatically update the panel based on what camera you are viewing through. As you can see, when I select different viewing cameras, the panel updates accordingly. But if I touch anything in the stage, the panel remains unaffected. Okay, so I think that covers all the basics of the camera animation tool. You should be off to the races. Hopefully, you found this lesson fun, informative, and useful. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.